Imagine waking up tomorrow morning and discovering that overnight your intelligence has doubled. A pill, a procedure, a software update to your neural interface. It doesn't matter how it happened. What matters is that suddenly, effortlessly, you can see patterns you never noticed before. Complex problems that once took hours now dissolve in seconds. You can read a room with terrifying accuracy, predicting what everyone will say before they speak. You understand the neurochemical mechanics behind every emotion, every impulse, every desire. At first, it feels like a superpower. You're euphoric, finally operating at the level you always knew you were capable of. But then something shifts. You pick up a novel you've been excited to read, and within 3 pages, you've mapped the entire plot structure. Every twist is visible chapters before it arrives. The mystery is gone. You sit down to watch a film, and you can't stop analyzing the manipulation techniques, the music cues. It's a shot composition, the algorithmic formula designed to trigger your emotional responses. You're aware of it all, and because you're aware, it stops working. You talk to someone you love, and instead of feeling connection, you see the conversation as a series of predictable social scripts. Their laughter, just a dopamine release. It's your affection, oxytocin, and evolutionary bonding mechanisms. The magic evaporates the moment you understand the trick. This is what I call posthuman horror. Not the fear of artificial intelligence taking over. Not the terror of robots or surveillance states. Something far more intimate and inescapable. The horror of becoming so intelligent that you transcend your own humanity and lose everything that made life worth living in the process. Because here's the question we don't ask enough. What if becoming smarter makes us less human? What if intelligence, the very trait we celebrate above all others, contains within it the seeds of our own psychological extinction? Right now, as you listen to this, companies are developing brain-computer interfaces. Cognitive enhancement drugs are being consumed by millions. We're merging with artificial intelligence at an accelerating rate. And nobody's asking what happens when we succeed. Nobody's asking what we lose when we win. This fear isn't new. Humanity has always suspected that knowledge comes with a price, that enlightenment and damnation might be 2 sides of the same coin. Consider Prometheus. He stole fire from the gods and gave it to humanity. Fire in this story isn't just warmth and light. It's knowledge. It's technology. It's the spark of consciousness that separates us from animals. And for this gift, Prometheus was chained to a rock where an eagle ate his liver every day for eternity. The liver would regenerate overnight, and the torture would begin again. The message is unmistakable. Some knowledge is worth eternal suffering. Some transformations are irreversible. Or take the Garden of Eden. Adam and Eve lived in paradise, innocent and content, until they ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. The moment they gained that knowledge, the moment they became intelligent enough to understand morality, death, and their own nakedness, they were exiled. Paradise was closed to them forever. They couldn't go back. Innocence, once lost, cannot be reclaimed. The ancient Greeks and the ancient Hebrews were telling us the same thing. Intelligence is a one-way door. Once you walk through it, the world you left behind ceases to exist. Even the philosophers understood this paradox. Socrates famously said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." But the book of Ecclesiastes counters with brutal honesty. For with much wisdom comes much sorrow. As knowledge increases, grief increases. Both are true. We must examine our lives to live meaningfully, but that examination brings suffering. The more we understand, the more we see what's broken, what's unjust, what's fundamentally unfixable. Mary Shelley saw it too. In 1818, she wrote Frankenstein, and at its core, that novel is about a man who became too intelligent for his own good. Victor Frankenstein transcends the natural limits of human knowledge. He learns to create life, and in doing so, he creates a monster, not just the creature, but himself. His intelligence elevates him beyond humanity, and the result is catastrophic. He loses everyone he loves. He becomes obsessed, isolated, destroyed by the very knowledge he sought. Then came Nietzsche, who diagnosed the modern condition with chilling clarity, called it the death of God. Not a celebration, but a lamentation. When humans became intelligent enough, rational enough, to deconstruct their own systems of meaning, their religions, their myths, their grand narratives, they entered a state of existential crisis. We killed God with our intelligence, and now we're standing in the wreckage, asking what comes next. These weren't just cautionary tales, they were prophecies. And now, for the first time in human history, we have the technological means to fulfill them. The myths warned us. We didn't listen. So why does excessive intelligence become toxic? What is it about understanding too much that breaks us? The answer lies in a deeply uncomfortable truth. Human consciousness was never designed to perceive reality accurately. Our brains didn't evolve to understand the universe. They evolved to keep us alive long enough to reproduce. And to do that, they had to lie to us. Constantly. Psychologists call them positive illusions, but that's a sanitized term for what they really are. Useful delusions. We overestimate our control over events. We underestimate risks. We believe we're smarter, more attractive, and more moral than average. Statistically, we can't all be above average, but we all believe we are. First, and here's the kicker, this isn't a bug. It's a feature. People with accurate perceptions of reality are more likely to be depressed. There's a term for this, depressive realism. Studies going back to the late 1970s have shown that clinically depressed individuals often have more accurate assessments of their abilities, their social standing, and their future prospects than healthy people. Think about that. The cost of mental health is a distorted view of reality. The price of seeing clearly is despair. Our minds also rely on cognitive dissonance, the ability to hold contradictory beliefs simultaneously without discomfort. This sounds like a weakness, but it's essential. It allows us to love people despite their flaws, to hope despite evidence to the contrary, to maintain social relationships that are never perfectly rational. If you became intelligent enough to eliminate all cognitive dissonance, you'd become functionally incapable of human connection.
Yes.
Then there's the problem of the narrative self. Your identity, who you think you are, is a story. It's a coherent, simplified version of billions of neural events, stitched together into something that feels like a unified you. But if your intelligence increases enough to see through that story, to recognize it as an illusion, what happens? You don't discover your true self. You discover there is no self. It's just processes, just firing neurons, just deterministic chains of cause and effect. This leads to something called the centipede's dilemma. Centipede is asked how it coordinates all of its legs while walking. The moment it starts thinking about it, it can no longer walk. When you become hyper-aware of automatic processes, social interaction, decision-making, even physical movement, they break down. Analysis paralysis isn't just about choices. It's about existence itself. And it gets worse. Hyperintelligence creates what I call infinite regress loops. You think about something, and you think about your thinking. And you think about the fact that you're thinking about your thinking. Consciousness folds in on itself, layer after layer, until the present moment becomes completely inaccessible. You're trapped in your own meta-awareness, unable to just be. Let's talk about pleasure. If you understand the exact neurochemical process behind every enjoyable experience, if you know that love is oxytocin, happiness is serotonin, that excitement is dopamine, does the experience still work? Or does it become like watching a magic trick after the magician explains it? You see the mechanism, you lose the magic. Social connection collapses too. If your theory of mind becomes so advanced that you can predict and understand everyone around you with near-perfect accuracy, you end up feeling like you're surrounded by automatons. You can't relate to people anymore because you see them too clearly. You're isolated not by lack of intelligence, but by an excess of it. And finally, the terror of determinism. If you become intelligent enough to trace the causal chain of your every thought, every decision, every action, to see that all of it arises from prior conditions, from neurochemistry, from evolutionary programming, then the felt experience of free will evaporates. You're left watching yourself as if from the outside, a passenger in a vehicle you don't control. These aren't theoretical problems. We're already seeing them. In the hyper-educated, in the chronically online, in everyone who's stared too long into the algorithmic abyss. The symptoms are here, just haven't named the disease yet. But here's the terrifying part. We don't have to wait for some distant future to see this horror unfold. It's already happening, right now. The posthuman transition has begun, and most of us don't even realize we're living through it. Walk onto any college campus, into any corporate office, and you'll find people chemically enhancing their cognition. Adderall, modafinil, nootropic stacks ordered from online pharmacies. Millions of people are boosting their intelligence with pills, and they're reporting something strange. Yes, they can focus longer. Yes, they're more productive. But they also describe a flattening of emotion, a sense of existential drift. The world becomes sharper, but somehow less vivid. They're smarter, but they've lost something they can't quite name. And then there's artificial intelligence. We talk about AI as if it's something separate from us, but that's not how we're using it. ChatGPT doesn't replace us, it augments us. We've outsourced our thinking, our pattern recognition, our decision-making to algorithms. Every time you let a recommendation engine choose your next show, every time you let autocomplete finish your sentence, you're offloading cognitive labor. You're becoming a hybrid, part human, part machine, and the machine half doesn't feel wonder. It doesn't feel doubt, it just optimizes. There's a phenomenon spreading through modern life that I call knowing too much syndrome. You can't watch a political speech without analyzing the rhetorical manipulation. You can't scroll through social media without seeing the engagement algorithms at work. You can't enjoy a conversation without recognizing the status games, the signaling, the unspoken power dynamics. You've become so intelligent, so aware that you can't engage with culture directly anymore. Everything is mediated by analysis. And analysis kills presence. Look at the extremely online crowd. These are people who've consumed so much media theory, so much meta-commentary, so much critique, that they've lost the ability to enjoy anything. Every movie is just tropes. Every song is derivative. Every relationship is performative. They're drowning in knowledge and starving for experience. Social media has made us all amateur sociologists, see behind the curtain of everyone's curated lives. We know the vacation photos are staged. We know the happy couple is probably fighting. We understand that everyone is performing for an audience. And that knowledge destroys the social illusions that communities are built on. We can't unsee it, can't believe in the performance anymore. Even the most intelligent communities are suffering. Look at the rationalists, the effective altruist people who've dedicated their lives to optimizing ethics and productivity. And many of them are burning out. They've turned morality into mathematics, and the equations don't leave room for human sciences. They're collapsing under the weight of their own intellectual rigor. I think about the gamers who solved their favorite games, the speedrunners who reduced artistic experiences to frame-perfect inputs, the theorycrafters who turned epic adventures into damage-per-second calculations. They didn't mean to ruin it. They just loved it so much they had to understand it completely, and understanding it completely destroyed it. There's a paradox buried in our education system too. The more educated you become statistically, the more likely you are to experience anxiety and depression. We call this progress. We celebrate higher education, but we don't ask what it costs. And then there's Silicon Valley, racing toward transhumanism. Neuralink promises to merge our brains with computers. Tech billionaires talk about uploading consciousness, about transcending biological limits. They think they're building utopia. But what if they're engineering our horror story? What if the end goal of human enhancement is something that's no longer recognizably human? Here's the meta-level irony. We worry about the AI alignment problem. We're terrified that artificial intelligence will become too intelligent for humans to control, that it will optimize for goals we don't intend, that it will leave us behind. But we never ask the parallel question. What if we become too intelligent for our own human architecture to sustain? What if we align ourselves right out of existence? The future isn't coming. It's here. You're already part of the experiment, and the results aren't looking good. So where does that leave us? Not with easy answers, not with a neat solution, because the truth is, intelligence isn't inherently good or bad. It's a tool. And like any tool, it can be used beyond its optimal function. You can sharpen a knife until it's too brittle to cut. You can tune an instrument until the strings snap. And you can enhance human intelligence until it ceases to serve human flourishing. Maybe the question isn't how intelligent can we become? Maybe it's how intelligent should we become? There's a concept I've been thinking about lately: strategic ignorance. The idea that some things are better left unexamined, not because we're cowards, not because we're anti-intellectual, but because we've gained enough wisdom to know where knowledge stops being useful and starts being destructive. Ancient traditions understood this. Buddhism talks about beginner's mind approaching the world with openness and without preconceptions, even if you're an expert. Taoism reveres the uncarved block. The state of natural simplicity before overthinking corrupts it. And Socrates, the smartest man in Athens, claimed his wisdom came from knowing that he knew nothing. They were all pointing toward the same insight. There's a kind of intelligence that comes from knowing when to stop being intelligent. Artists talk about this too. They describe their best work as emerging when they're not thinking, when they're in flow states. When the conscious mind steps aside, the moment you start analyzing your creative process, it stops working. Presence requires a temporary suspension of meta-awareness. Magic requires forgetting how the trick is done. What if the most intelligent thing we could do is choose to be enchanted again? To watch a movie without dissecting it, to love someone without calculating compatibility, to hope without running probabilistic forecasts. It's not because we can't do those things, but because we've become wise enough to know we shouldn't. This isn't about rejecting knowledge. It's about recognizing that intelligence without boundaries, without values, without restraint, becomes a form of violence against the self. We're not meant to optimize everything. We're not meant to see through every illusion. Some illusions are load-bearing. Remove them, and the whole structure collapses. In the end, the question isn't whether we can transcend our humanity. The technology is already here. The capability exists. The real question is whether we'd still recognize ourselves if we did. Because maybe the horror isn't becoming posthuman. Maybe the horror is looking back at what we were and realizing we can't remember why it mattered. So I'll leave you with this. What are you willing to not know in order to remain human?